So the subject matter is about teruv, and I want to first explain the concept in the halacha of what is the different domains in Shabbat, and then we take it from there.
Pues el concepto va a ser acerca de Eruv, lo que conlleva en términos de alajá, y también va a explicar los diferentes dominios que van dentro de este tema y su repercusión cabalísticamente también.
So we have in the Torah, we have the private domain, public domain, and Midrabanan we have another concept that is called Carmelit and Makom Ptur. So I want to define each one of those four domains.
Entonces, de la Torah tenemos dos dominios, que es el público, el privado, y de parte de la tradición rabínica tenemos Carmelit y Makom Katur, y va a definir esos conceptos ahora.
So the first, that is most simple, is the private domain, which is like the house of the person. It doesn't have to be a house. It can be even four tefachim. Tefach is like white fist. So 4 tefachim in the height of 10 tefachim is already private domain. So any platform that you have, that like a pillar or something like that, even that will be called private domain for the subject matter of Shabbat.
Entonces, el más simple es el dominio privado, que está definido por 4 tefajim de ancho. Un tefaj es la medida de un puño por 10 tefajim de alto. Entonces, cualquier plataforma o cualquier propiedad que tenga como mínimo estas medidas ya se considera un dominio privado.
The public domain is basically the road that people are walking on. So the market or something like that also will be called public domain.
El dominio público se considera como la calle, la avenida donde la gente pasa, y también un mercado sería considerado como un dominio público.
The concept of Carmelit that the Rabbanan added is something that is in the public domain, but it is not used as public domain. People are not going through there because it is closed from 3 sides. So there is one side that is open, so people are not using it because it's not passed through, but it is not private domain. So this is called Carmelit, basically.
Carmelit, que es un concepto rabínico, es dentro de un dominio público, pero que no se tiene acceso. Entonces explica el rabino que es parte de como un lugar donde no se puede accesar libremente. Ese dominio se considera Carmelit.
And Makom Ptur is basically a place that no one is able to use. So that will be Makom Ptur. So for example, high in the air, it will be Makom Ptur, for example. Something that is not usable.
Y Makom Katur es algo que no se puede acceder a él. Por ejemplo, un lugar alto en el aire, un lugar que es físicamente imposible acceder a él.
So the basic prohibition in that is the majority of Masechet Shabbat is dealing with, and all of Masechet Eruvin is dealing with, is about this subject matter. It is one of the biggest subject matters in the halacha. There is a whole volume of the Mishnah Berurah, all of the fourth part, almost all of that is talking about Eruvin, and it's not without a reason. It is very, very complex, and there's many details in that. So in this class, we will just touch the subject just to have a certain understanding.
Entonces, este tema en general, Eruvin, es un tema muy tocado en lo que es el Masejet Shabbat. Tiene su propio Masejet, su propio tratado en el Talmud, que es el Tratado de Eruvin. También es casi un tomo completo en la Mishnah Berurah. Y que se hable tanto de él no es por algo, no es sin razón, sino que por la complejidad de este asunto se tocan con tanta profundidad. Sin embargo, nosotros solamente vamos a hablar de él de forma conceptual y general.
So basically, the prohibition is to take an object and to take it from the public domain to the private domain, from the private domain to the public domain. Something like that is called hotza'ah mireshut lereshut, to move from one domain to another.
Pues básicamente la prohibición es tomar un objeto y transportarlo de un dominio privado a un dominio público, o de un dominio público a un dominio privado. Y el término alágico es llevar de dominio a dominio.
So, and there is another prohibition that the Gemara is mentioning a lot, which is moving an object within 4 amot in the public domain, even though it was not going from the private domain to the public domain. To move it within the public domain 4 amot is also prohibition.
Hay otra prohibición que es mover un objeto más de 4 amot, que es aproximadamente 2 metros, incluso que no se cambie de dominio y se haga dentro del dominio público, es una prohibición mover un objeto más de 4 amot.
So, just to make a simple application of this halacha, according to that, if you don't have a roof, you cannot take your siddur from your house to the synagogue, to the Bet Knesset. You cannot take a towel to the mikveh. You cannot go to a round in Shabbat around your house with a key in your pocket, because even small thing, even tissue, even key in the pocket, it will be tiltul from the private domain to the public domain and within the public domain.
Entonces, como ejemplo, si no se tiene un eruv, no se puede llevar del sidur de la casa a la sinagoga o la toalla a la mikve, inclusive una llave en el pantalón no se podía transportar, incluso un Kleenex, un pañuelo no se podría tener en la ropa porque ya sería transportar.
So, places that don't have a roof, it is very problematic. That's why in all the places that there is a set Jewish community, the rabbi have to make an effort to create a roof, because it is very difficult to go without carrying anything. It's possible. There is many people that do that, but the roof makes a big difference.
Entonces, en un lugar donde no se tiene eruv es un problema muy grande, por eso en lugares donde hay mucha concentración judía, los rabinos se esfuerzan en construir un eruv porque facilita mucho la vida. Incluso que hay gente hoy en día que puede vivir el Shabbat sin el eruv, es algo muy, muy complicado y que se puede violar de manera muy fácil.
So, now I want to give a little bit of understanding according to the Kabbalah for all of those subject matters that we were dealing with.
Entonces ahora que el rabino quiere dar un entendimiento de un tono un poco más cabalístico de esto respecto al eruv.
So, when we speak about private domain, what is the Kabbalistic concept of private domain? The real private domain is the domain of Hashem. Hashem is the whole world, the whole creation is private domain of Hashem.
Entonces el concepto de dominio privado, cabalísticamente hablando, es el dominio de Hashem. Todo el mundo, toda la creación es un dominio privado que le pertenece a Hashem.
So, if so, how can be public domain? Everything belongs to Hashem. Everything is the private domain of Hashem. So what place we have for something that will be public domain?
Si es así, entonces surge la obvia pregunta de cuál sería el dominio público. Si todo le pertenece a Hashem, ¿qué se considera dominio público?
So there is a pasuk that it says that Hashem created men straight, and they, plural, have asked for multiple calculations. I'm trying to translate it. Yeah.
Again, so Hashem created
Hashem created men straight, and they, which is plural, have asked for multiple calculations.
We are not talking about men. We're talking about something else.
Right.
Entonces, para entender lo que es el dominio público, hay un verso en la Torah que dice que Hashem creó al hombre erguido y ellos refiriéndose a otra cosa, pidieron cierto dominio.
So the idea is that the creation, the individuals of the creation, when they are not nullifying themselves to Hashem, we are creating public domain.
Entonces la idea es que cuando los individuos, la creación de Hashem no se nulifica a sí misma en pos de él, estamos creando otro dominio, como que sale uno del dominio de Hashem y crea otro dominio.
And I want to explain it a little bit deeper, that in the beginning of the creation, so there is a stage that is called the world of Nekudim.
Pues lo quiere explicar de una manera un poco más profunda y dice que al principio de la creación hay una etapa que se denomina la era de los Nekudim, la creación de los Nekudim, que es como las vocales que van, los puntitos que van en las letras.
So the Arizal explains that the world of Nekudim is the primer world before the creation of the Atzilut.
Entonces el Arizal explica que el mundo de los Nekudim es un mundo primario que es inclusive antes del mundo de Atzilut.
And this is the domain, the place that happened the shattering of the vessels, the breakdown.
Y en este lugar, en el mundo de los Nekudim, es donde ocurrió el rompimiento de los recipientes. Es un término cabalístico.
And the Arizal explains that this is the source of all of the negativity that there is in the world. It's all coming in, the root of that is coming from that place that is called the shattering of the vessels in the world of the Nekudim.
Entonces el Arizal explica que toda la negatividad que existe en el mundo tiene su raíz en ese mundo, en el mundo de los Nekudim, en donde ocurrió el rompimiento de los recipientes.
So now we have already the concept of the private domain, which is the domain of Hashem, the original creation, and there is the public domain, which is later stage that was demanded by the creation that wants to be independent, that doesn't want to nullify itself to Hashem, that creating public domain. And within that public domain happens the shattering of the vessels, which is the source of the negativity.
Entonces tenemos los dos dominios. En el principio había un dominio privado de Hashem. Entonces, en una etapa posterior, la propia creación pidió desafiliarse de este dominio, teniendo un dominio diferente. Esto se considera el dominio público. Y dentro de este dominio está el mundo de los Nekudim, donde ocurrió el rompimiento de los recipientes y que de ahí está la fuente de toda la negatividad que existe.
So now, after those introductions, so we can try to understand the meaning of Eruv. What does it mean when we do Eruv?
Pues después de esta introducción, podemos llegar a entender el concepto, lo que significa Eruv. ¿Qué es un Eruv?
So first I will say that the custom of the Arizal, that I'm trying to apply myself also, to do Eruv every Friday, every Erev Shabbat, to create a new Eruv. Why is that? What is the source of this idea?
Entonces, el rabino explica que la tradición del Arizal era, y que él mismo trata de aplicar a su vida, es crear un Eruv cada Shabbat. Cada 8 días se hace un Eruv nuevo. Y va a explicar ahora la razón del por qué hacerlo cada 8 días.
So the principle of Eruv, first of all, halachically, is that we take the public domain and we turn it to be private domain.
Pues el concepto del Eruv, alágicamente hablando, es que tomamos el dominio público y lo convertimos en dominio privado.
So how we do that? So I have bread in my house and I have in mind to inquire that bread to all of the people that I'm related with that are living next to me, whoever it will be beneficial for him. So everybody are the owners of the bread. Everybody are able to come and eat that bread. And all of the private domains that are part of the Eruv, they are becoming to unite, to becoming to be one, and nullifying the middle space, which is the public domain between them. So everything becomes to be one domain of private.
Entonces lo que Rabino hace es que tiene pan que lo designa con la intención de que todos los que le rodean y todos los que están conectados a él en un espacio físico van a ser ahora dueños de ese pan y pueden venir a comer de ese pan cuando sea, no importa el tiempo, o sea, cuando sea pueden entrar a comer de ese pan. Y eso lo que conlleva es que todos los dominios privados se vuelven un solo dominio y nulifican las partes intermedias que separan entre el dominio privado y dominio privado, que sería el dominio público. Eso se nulifica y todo se convierte en un gran dominio privado.
So the simple application of that rule is that now I can carry from my house to the synagogue, from the synagogue to my neighbor. We can take things from one place to another because we look on all of the houses, all of the places as one private domain, that it's that everybody are uniting. So even without the deep understanding of the Kabbalah, just the idea that the whole community is uniting for Shabbat, that for itself is very, very beautiful principle.
Entonces, la acción práctica de esto es que ya puede llevar un sidur a la sinagoga o transportar algo a la casa del vecino, inclusive sin tomar en cuenta el concepto cabalístico, el hecho de que toda la comunidad se una para crear un dominio privado, ya es un concepto muy bonito de unión, de hermandad.
Okay, and I just want to make a note is that, like I said, there's a lot of halachot of Eruv. So anyone that wants to do Eruv, so we have to go through the details of the halachot. You cannot just do Eruv without understanding all of the needs for Eruv. So for now, if you don't have Eruv, that rabbi that knows how to do it, so don't carry around. You have to go, if you're going out of your house in Shabbat, you cannot carry anything on you.
Entonces, dice el rabino que a pesar de que suena simple, no es tan simple y hay muchas halajot que se tienen que tomar en cuenta y muchos detalles que se tienen que tomar en cuenta para hacer un eruv. Entonces, si la persona vive en un lugar donde no hay un eruv establecido por los rabanim de ese lugar, y no es tan fácil como designar, como se escucha el ejemplo de designar el pan, sino que entonces es mejor no cargar y no andar transportando, al menos que se haya hecho con la supervisión de un rabino que está experto en el tema.
And by the way, somebody was asking me about riding bicycle in Shabbat because he's living far away from the Bet Knesset. So one thing is about the bicycle itself, if you're allowed or not allowed to ride a bicycle. So there is opinion of the Ben Ish Chai that you're allowed to ride on a bicycle, but even if you're going with this permission that most of the world are not relying on, but what do you do about Eruv? You carry the bicycle in the public domain if you don't have Eruv.
Entonces, el ejemplo que dio es el de una bicicleta, que la bicicleta en sí es un tema de disputa lágico en donde está, la disputa es si se puede o no usar en Shabbat. La opinión del Ben Ish Chai es que sí, pero la mayoría no se basan en esa opinión y la mayoría no usan la bicicleta en Shabbat. Pero en caso de que sí se pudiera, si no hay Eruv, entonces no se podría transportar la bicicleta.
Anyhow, to go back to the principle of the Kabbalah of Eruv, we're taking the public domain, we turn it to be private domain. So it is basically taking the domain of that have space for negativity and to turn it into domain that is only Kedusha, that there's no space for negativity.
Entonces, regresando al concepto cabalístico, el hacer el Eruv sería tomar conceptualmente la negatividad y volverla dominio privado, que es el dominio de la Kedusha, donde no hay espacio para la negatividad.
And this is something that it's possible to do that only for Shabbat, because Shabbat itself in the time dimension is a place of Kedusha. So when we're taking the principle of that to space dimension, that will be the Eruv, that we're making the space to be also fitting for the time dimension. And then both of them together is only Kedusha.
Esto solamente se puede realizar en Shabbat, porque Shabbat tiene la característica en cuanto a la dimensión del tiempo que se vuelve Kedusha. Entonces, cuando se hace el Eruv, que es en la dimensión del espacio, en Shabbat tiene la característica especial de que logra juntar la dimensión del tiempo con la dimensión del espacio y crear una dimensión de Kedusha.
So according to this, you can understand why the Arizal was very precise to do himself Eruv every Erev Shabbat, because this is part of the preparation for Shabbat to elevate all of the public domain, all of the place that have negativity, to elevate it to higher level, that all of the public domain, all of the negativity nullifies, and then we can experience the light of Hashem within this domain, also time-wise and also space-wise.
Entonces, por eso vemos que, de acuerdo a este concepto, la Arizal era muy diligente en hacer él personalmente el Eruv cada Erev Shabbat para poder subir de nivel todas las cosas que sea de negatividad, tanto en la dimensión del tiempo como en la dimensión del espacio, y cada Shabbat poder elevar lo que le rodeaba.
So I would just, halachically, I want to give certain halacha that, like I said, you cannot carry anything except of what you are wearing. Something that you are wearing, so it is not carrying. Carrying, it means that is something that you're not wearing. So basically, to go out with your clothes, obviously you're allowed. But to carry, for example, the key of your house, it will be a problem. So for many places, many people, they have the Siddur in the synagogue, they don't need to carry it, but they do need to carry the key because they don't want to leave the house open. So I want to give you the trick how to carry the key without breaking Shabbat because of Tiltul in the public domain.
Entonces, lógicamente, la ropa, lo que uno se pone, no se considera cargar. Lo que se considera cargar en Shabbat es cosas que no pertenecen a la vestimenta, como por ejemplo una llave. Mucha gente lo que hace es que deja el sidur en la sinagoga para no tenerlo que cargar, pero la llave de la casa llega a ser un problema porque la gente no quiere dejar la casa abierta. Entonces el rabino nos va a explicar algún truco para poder cargar la llave en Shabbat.
So the trick is that the key becomes to be part of the belt, okay? If you just put the key on a string, and it's, I want to give an example. Okay, never mind. But the point is that if this is the whole of the key and you're putting the string through that, so it's not good because the key is not part of the garment. It is still a way of tiltul.
Entonces, el rabino explica que si al agujero de la llave se le mete una cuerda, un hilo o algo, eso no es suficiente porque el hilo se tendría que amarrar a la vestimenta, al cinturón, lo que sea, y seguiría siendo considerado como cargar. Esa solución no es buena.
So if you take the two ends of the string and you put it that inside of the hole of the key, so the key is making the connection of the two ends of the string, so you have the string, and the key is not only on the string, it is holding the string that it will be connected. So in this way, the key becomes to be part of the garment. Then you can put this belt on you or like a necklace or something like that, and that won't be carrying because it is part of the garment.
Entonces, explica el rabino que para que la llave sea considerada parte de la ropa, inclusive se pueda usar como un collar, las dos puntas del hilo o de la vestimenta con la que se está amarrando la llave tienen que amarrarse de tal forma que se vuelvan, que la llave sea lo que mantiene unidos esos dos finales del hilo.
Okay. Somebody have questions about what we were speaking until now?
¿Alguien tiene preguntas de lo que se ha estado hablando hasta ahorita?
Yo. Shalom Arav.
Shalom Aleichem, Rabbeinu Israel.
Baruch Hashem Arav. Let me ask you something.
Yes.
Once I read that nowadays it's impossible to have a public domain, that basically how the streets are, how the cities are, building right now, it's really difficult to have a public domain, like from the right. You ever heard about it?
Yes. So there is an argument between the Rosh and the Rambam about the definition of public domain. Is it because does it have to be wide, 16 amot, which is 8 meters, or you have to have 600,000 people going through that road in one day? So this is an argument. So to have the public domain that will be the right for all the opinions, it has to be the two conditions. Also that it will be wide, and also that you will have 600,000 people going through that road in one day. So in regular days that are not quarantined, so there is many roads that are main roads in the world that it is for sure the right for all the opinions. But even if it's not the right for all the opinions, but still, if it is public domain, even if it's not the right, still the problem is of Tiltul is still there. But first say that in Spanish, please.
Yehuda, please.
No, traduce tú, por favor.
It is too long and have a lot of, understood everything you say in English, Baruch Hashem, but translated, we have to go leat.
Okay, so I will say again. There is yeah.
First translate the question.
Por favor, Yehuda.
El rabino Villasís preguntó al rabino Shepard que hoy en día hay una disputa entre los poskim de que mucho de la forma en la que se construyen las ciudades ya no se consideraría dominio público. Entonces le preguntó sobre eso al rabino.
Okay, so again, the point is that what you're saying is about argument of what is the definition of public domain, that it will be the Oraita. But that for me, this is not the subject matter. I'm not trying to get public domain that will be the Oraita. I want to get all of the public domain, also the Rabbanan public domain, that it will be private domain. Okay, even if it is the Rabbanan public domain, we don't want to carry in that public domain.
Entonces el rabino explica que esa disputa que menciona el rabino Israel es de que se considera dominio público de Oraita, o sea, según lo que está escrito en la Torá. Pero lo que el rabino explica es que a él lo que le importa ahorita es no transportar ya sea en dominio público de Oraita o dominio público de Rabanán. Lo que no queremos es transportar en ninguno de los dos.
בסדר, רבינו ישראל?
Yes. תודה רבה.
בשמחה רבה. What are the questions we have?
Yes. Chaim from Brazil, he's asking if the nekudot are part of the breaking of the vessels, and if this is the reason why a Sefer Torah doesn't have nekudot.
Oh, I like the questions of Chaim Yitzchak.
I'm just going to translate it into Spanish.
Yes.
Yitzchak Chaim pregunta que si las nekudot son parte de la ruptura de los vasos y si esta es una de las razones si esta es una de las razones por las que un Sefer Torah está escrito sin nekudot.
So the answer is yes. The Sefer Torah doesn't have nekudot, and this is a hint that before the reading of the Torah, it is like the primer state of the breakdown of the vessels. And when the Baal Koreh is reading, the only way that you can read is putting the nekudot in the reading. Otherwise, you cannot read the text without nekudot. So when we read it, we are doing the tikkun of the world. Yes.
Entonces el rabino explica que sí, que cuando la Torah está escrita sin las nekudot, antes de ser leída, es como la creación al principio. Pero al momento en el que el Balcoire, la persona que lee la Torah, la lee, pues para leerla se necesitan las nekudot, las vocales, pues al momento en el que se saca el sefer y se lee, se está haciendo el tikkun de ese rompimiento de los vasos.
Other questions?
¿Hay alguna otra pregunta?
I have a question.
Yes.
Rab, shalom.
Shalom Aleichem.
Which is a relation between Lahot of Mukse and Otsamer Reshut Lireshut. With one action, a person can transgress two Melahot. And another question is how we can explain Shevirat Kelim with the Pasuk on King of Edom.
Okay. So let's start with the first question about Muktzeh and Hotzah Mereshut Lereshut. So it can be that what you're carrying in the public domain is Muktzeh, and then you're also carrying a Muktzeh, and also it is moving from one Reshut to another. But it is really, it's two different subject matters. To holding a Muktzeh also in your private domain is one problem, and to carry something even that it's not a Muktzeh in the public domain is another problem. It can come together, but it doesn't have to be together. First, translate this, please.
La pregunta que hizo Flores, no me acuerdo del nombre, fue la relación que hay entre cargar Mukse y transportar Mukse en Shabbat. Y el rabino explica que, pues, que sí es posible cargar algo que es Mukse, pero en sí son dos temas diferentes. O sea, inclusive cuando estás en tu casa no puedes tocar ni andar lidiando con Mukse. Y cuando estás cargando afuera puede ser algo que no sea Mukse y estás violando transportar porque pues está prohibido transportar.
Now, about the kings of Edom, yes, the kings of Edom are symbolizing the shadowing of the vessels. The source of that is in the Zohar. And from there, the Arizal is elaborating the whole concept of the shadowing of the vessels. But right now, I don't want to go into that whole explanation of the kings of Edom. Bezrat Hashem, maybe we'll leave it to another time.
También preguntó de que si con los reyes de Edom se puede explicar el rompimiento de los vasos, y el rabino explica que sí, que de hecho en ese pasaje es donde se basa el Zohar y el Arizal para explicar este suceso del rompimiento de los vasos, pero que no se quiere involucrar mucho en este tema y que sería bueno para otra clase. And we have another question from Chaim.
Yes.
And he's asking, he's saying, is it because that when we're davening in the Siddur, it has nekudot, it does not bring the forces of the korban into the breaking of the vessel?
If we're davening with a Siddur that doesn't have nekudot, if
No,
it
has nekudot.
That has nekudot.
It doesn't bring the side of the forces of the korban,
yes.
of the...
Okay, I think I understand the question. That is, if he's saying that, like, the reason that we have to have nekudot in the Siddur, that it will not give strength to the klipot, to the negativity. This is the what you want to say, Chaim?
Jaime, el rabino pregunta si tu pregunta es que la razón por la cual rezamos de que en el Siddur hay nekudot es para no darle fuerza al otro lado. ¿Esa es la pregunta? So we have to wait for him to answer because he doesn't have a microphone. Yeah, he says that's the answer. Okay. Yeah, that's the question.
Okay, so it could be that it is better for this reason to pray with Sidur Nekudot, but the Sidur is really something that because we don't know the Tfilah good, so we will need to use Sidur. But in the old times, they didn't have Sidur. And also today, there is many rabbis that they're praying by heart, they don't have Sidur. So you can't say that it depends to have Sidur with Nekudot. We could have without any Sidur. So it's not so much about it. But anyhow, when someone needs Sidur, so for sure you want to have Sidur with Nekudot, with the right vowels and everything, that you won't say everything correctly without any mistakes. Because if we do mistakes, so then it is creating a certain negativity. So as much as we are able, we want to pray clean and pure without any mistakes. Yeah.
Entonces explica el rabino que sí tiene algo que ver con lo de los Nikudot del Sidur, pero que no necesariamente, ya que muchos rabinos se saben, o sea, la razón por la cual usamos un Sidur hoy en día es porque no nos sabemos de memoria el rezo, pero que hay muchos rabinos, mucha gente que sí se lo sabe de memoria y lo pueden hacer de memoria. Sin embargo, si se va a usar el Sidur, es claramente mejor que tenga Nikudot, porque hay una cuestión de que si no se pronuncia correctamente sobre el rezo, sí genera un cierto grado de negatividad. And now Chaim is saying that he's talking specifically about the Rashash of the Sidur.
In the Sidur Rashash, in the old version, in the hand script version, so there was Nikud only in places that there was Kavanah of the Nikud. They didn't have, because they were writing it by hand, so it takes a long time to add the Nikud to all of the Sidur. So they added only in places that it was like meditations. So for meditations is something else. It's not about the way how you say the word, is about how to meditate on the word, the meaning of that in the Sfirot.
Entonces el rabino explica que en el Sidur antiguo del Rashash, como era hecho a mano, solamente se incluía los Nekudot en los lugares, en las palabras específicas donde se requería una meditación. Porque ya que estaba escrito a mano, era mucho trabajo poner también los Nekudot a todas las palabras. Sin embargo, no era un tema de cómo pronunciar la palabra, sino en dónde se tenía que hacer la meditación requerida.
We have other questions?
¿Hay alguna otra pregunta?
Yo tengo otra pregunta. Por favor, tradúcela para que todos puedan escuchar. Rabino, nosotros hemos estado en cuarentena ya creo que casi 3 meses y tenemos que usar mascarillas protectoras para el corona. Entonces hay máscaras que son muy sencillas como máscaras quirúrgicas o hay mascarillas más complejas que tienen filtros, son plásticas y ocupan toda la cara. Para portarlas en Shabbat, ¿sería permitido o no permitido? ¿Sería algo parecido a cuando una persona lleva un bastón para poder caminar o no?
Now English, please.
So, yes. So, because this is asking that we've been in quarantine like for the last 3 months. So people now are required to walk with masks. So there are different types of masks. So he's asking that there are certain types of masks that have like filters and stuff. And he's asking if that would be an issue for Shabbos, and also that if it could be similar as to a cane for being able to walk or not.
I don't see a reason that the mask will not be considered as a part of the garment. You're putting it on you. To carry it in your pocket, it is a problem. But the moment that you put it on you when you're in your house, and then you go out with it, so even though there's a filter that is connected to that, but it is connected to that. So it's not a problem.
Entonces el rabino responde que él no ve ninguna razón por cual sea un problema, ya que es algo que uno se pone sobre su cuerpo, incluso que tenga un filtro sobre el cubrebocas, sobre la máscara. Entonces que el problema sería quitártelo y cargarlo, y guardarlo en la bolsa, ese sería el problema, pero mientras uno lo tenga puesto, él no ve ningún problema.
And by the way, about the virus, I made a lot of videos of Sgulot from Rav Chaim Falaji that is to remove plagues. So I have in the YouTube channel, I have a whole section of Kabbalistic healing that and we started also one is already with subtitles to Spanish, and Bezrat Hashem, all of them will be. But whoever is in situation, generally it's good, but specifically people that are in situation of quarantine, so to see those videos and to understand the way how to treat it spiritually, Bezrat Hashem, I'm sure that anyone that will follow all of those instructions, all of the instruction, all of the videos, and plus also the videos of the Ktoret that explains the meditation of the Ktoret and why saying the Ktoret is good for this, I'm sure that it will help a lot.
Entonces el rabino también quiere decir que por cierto, él tiene en su canal de YouTube videos de Segulot en contra de las pandemias para eliminarlas, y que para los que estamos en situación de cuarentena sería bueno verlos. De hecho, dice que tiene uno ya con subtítulos en español y que Bezrat Hashem todos van a tener subtítulos en español, y que también el Pituma Ketore también eso ayuda, que también lo pueden encontrar en su canal de YouTube.
We have other questions?
¿Hay más preguntas?
Okay. So I will say a small point about the Parashat Shavua, and then we have to stop because there's a few things that I have to go to do. So in Israel, we are in Parashat Korach, but Chutz La'aretz, for you guys, we are in Parashat Shlach Lecha.
Entonces el rabino ahora va a hablar un poquito de la parashat de la semana, y dice que en Israel están en la parashat Korach, pero que en Chutz La'aretz estamos en la parashat Shlach Lecha.
So, so the Parashat Shlach Lecha is talking about the Meraglim, that going to Eretz Israel, and within Eretz Israel, they saw the wonderful fruits of Eretz Israel, and they were saying the Lashon Hara on Eretz Israel.
Entonces, en la parasha de Shlach Lecha estamos hablando de los Meraglim, los espías que fueron a ver la tierra de Israel y vieron las frutas grandes, jugosas. Entonces estamos hablando de ese tema.
And we see that it was a very, very severe sin. Even though they had all kinds of good intentions, that they wanted to stay in the desert, to learn Torah with Moshe Rabbeinu, and so on. But the fact that they were saying Lashon Hara on Eretz Israel, so Hashem was very, very harsh, and the punishment was very severe, that all of Am Israel was going through 40 years of suffering in the desert, and people were dying, and it's a big thing.
Entonces, el hecho de que hayan hablado Lashon Hara de la tierra de Israel fue un pecado muy, muy grande. Incluso que hay opiniones que dicen que fue por una razón de quedarse en el desierto, estudiar más Torah con Moshe Rabbeinu. Incluso eso lo hace una averá, una transgresión muy grande, y con consecuencias como quedarnos más tiempo en el desierto, 40 años.
So, first of all, the simple understanding of that parasha, that people that were in Eretz Israel came to Eretz Israel, and they didn't find what they needed, and they had all kinds of difficulties, and they going back to the homeland. So they have to be very, very careful not to say, it was so difficult in Eretz Israel, I didn't find my place, I didn't find the job, all things like that. It is very, very severe. You will see that in the parasha, that Hashem, He cares about this very, very much.
Entonces, una enseñanza que se aprende es que para la gente que ha estado o estuvo en Israel y no se acomodó por la razón que sea y tuvo que regresar a la tierra de donde venía, no hablar mal de la tierra de Israel, no decir no me acomodé, o es muy difícil vivir allá, o no encontré trabajo, o sea, hablar en general mal de la tierra, porque vemos que es algo que le importa mucho a Hashem.
And we see that through the few places in Torah, there is a connection of Eretz Israel, Torah, and Am Israel.
Entonces vemos que a través de la Torá en muchos lugares se ve que hay una conexión especial entre la tierra de Israel, la Torá y el pueblo judío.
So we see that the concept of the Lashon Hara is the same thing for to say Lashon Hara about anyone in Am Yisrael, to say Lashon Hara about Eretz Israel, or to say Lashon Hara about the Torah. All of those three things, it is something very severe because this is three things that Hashem wanted in the beginning of the creation, before the time of the creation. That was the pre-plan of Hashem to create those things. So that's one of the reasons to understand why Hashem cares about any negative thing that anyone say about those three things.
Entonces, basado en esta conexión, vemos que también decir la Lashon Hara de el pueblo judío, o sea, de algún judío, o decir la Lashon Hara de la Torá, o de la tierra otra vez, es un problema muy grande y que están todos en el mismo concepto, porque explica el rabino que era algo que estaba en los planes de Hashem desde antes de la creación. Era como su ideal, la Torá, la tierra de Israel y los judíos en ella.
And by the way, with the collection of the virus, so there was many tzaddikim in Eretz Israel that they said that the tikkun we have to do to remove this virus is to strengthen our awareness of the halachot of Lashon Hara, because and also the mask that is blocking the mouth, you see that is something that is very, very symbolized, but that we have to block our mouth and not to say Lashon Hara.
Entonces, con toda esta situación también de la pandemia que está pasando en el mundo, los tzadikim explican que es también una forma de hacer tikkun por la Lashon Hara, porque simbólicamente vemos como el usar la máscara, el cubrebocas, te tapa la boca para que no hables. Entonces, que todo lo que se está haciendo ahorita con la pandemia es una forma de hacer tikkun y que también los tzadikim recomiendan fortalecerse en las leyes de la Lashon Hara.
And for this reason, I put on the website King David Kabbalah all of the halachot of Lashon Hara for free. That is PDF that you can download. Right now it's only English. Bezrat Hashem, we will have also translation for Spanish. But I'm sure that anyone that will search for that, you can find okay. Maybe Bezrat Hashem we will do but it is very important to read the halachot of Lashon Hara and to take it very seriously.
Pues dice el rabino que es por esto que en su sitio web King David Kabbalah puso una versión en PDF gratis de todas las leyes de la Lashon Hara, pero que de cualquier forma es muy importante que todos estudiemos las leyes de la Lashon Hara y fortalecernos en las mismas. We have a question. Should we wait to the end or no?
I want to add another point. So Lashon Hara, we understand that Lashon Hara principle is to reveal negativity. Okay, Lashon Hara is revealing negativity. So revealing the negativity can be verbally, that's the Lashon Hara. It can be also something that is conceptually, when someone is thinking negative things, and it can be something that is even a negative act, to do something against someone else, or against Eretz Israel, or against the Torah. So each one of those three is different level. The Nefesh HaChaim explains that physical act is related with the world of Asiyah. Speaking, is the world of Yetzirah, and thought is the world of Bria. So basically my point is that the sin of Lashon Hara is not only speaking, it's also not to think negative and also not to do negative things. And when we are guarding ourselves from doing those three levels of act, speech, and thought, not to do anything negative about Eretz Israel, about another Jew, about the Torah, so then we are guarded because we don't have negativity in our inner world of those three worlds, and then we are able to purify all of those worlds.
Entonces explica el rabino que el concepto detrás de esto es que a través de la Lashon Hara se revela la negatividad. Entonces explica que hay tres niveles. Está de revelar la negatividad. Está a través de un acto físico, que es hacer algo en contra de otro judío, hacer algo en contra de la Torá, o hacer alguna averá dentro de la tierra de Israel. Ese acto, según ese nivel, según el Nefesh HaChaim, es el mundo de Asiyah. Después sigue el habla, que es la Shonara, es hablar algo en contra de un judío, algo en contra de la Torah, o algo hablar en contra de Eretz Israel. Y según el Nefesh HaChaim, ese nivel es el de Yetzirah. Después está el nivel del pensamiento, que es pensar cosas negativas en contra de otro judío, en contra de la Torá o en contra de Israel. Y ese nivel es el mundo de Briah. Entonces dice Rabino que cuando nosotros nos cuidamos, basado en el Nefesh HaChaim, nos cuidamos de no hablar, de no actuar mal, hablar mal o pensar mal, creamos una protección alrededor de nosotros que nos permite llegar a un grado de purificación mayor y también de salpicar a nuestro alrededor ese grado de purificación.
So let's hear the last question and then we have to finish because I have to go.
So we have two questions. One is from Chaim, and he's asking if talking Lashon Hara of the government of Israel, is it the same of talking Lashon Hara of Israel?
Okay, that's a difficult question. To say Lashon Hara about people that are going against the Torah. So it is very, very delicate, and someone that he have a doubt, he doesn't know if it is allowed or not allowed. So I would say that it's better not to say anything if somebody doesn't know. That's the first point.
Okay. Entonces, Jaime preguntó que si está mal hablar la Shonara del gobierno de Israel, o sea, que se equivale a hablar la Shonara del gobierno de Israel, equivale a hablar la Shonara de Eretz Israel. El rabino explica, dijo que es una buena pregunta y dice que hablar la Shonara de alguien que está en contra de la Torah es un tema muy delicado y que conlleva muchos puntos y que si se está en la duda de que si se puede o no se puede, es mejor abstenerse y no hablar.
So that's basically what I do. I don't know exactly what Hashem thinks about those people in the government, because obviously what they do is mixed. Some things that they do is good and they supporting Torah, and some things they do is not good, that is against the Torah. So what is the total picture? We don't know what is it, the total picture in the eyes of Hashem. So generally, if we don't have a good reason to say anything, it's better not to say nothing.
Entonces el rabino explica que lo que él aplica para su vida es que en verdad no sabemos de manera general como lo ve Hashem. Sabemos que en el gobierno de Israel hacen cosas que ayudan a la Torah, pero también hacen cosas que no ayudan a la Torah. Y como no entendemos cómo Hashem ve eso, entonces mejor él se abstiene de hablar mal del gobierno de Israel.
If for example, you have someone in your community that is saying that all of the government is holy and they are all tzaddikim because they are in Eretz Israel or something like that. So for someone like that, you can tell him, look, it's not so simple. There is also things that are against the Torah. We have to see what Hashem wants from this. But so yeah, we have to be balanced about it. Not to say Lashon Hara, but if there is something to rebuke that is against the Torah, so we can make a protest against something that is against the Torah. But we have to be very careful on what we say.
Entonces explica el reino que si hay alguien en tu comunidad que dice que el gobierno de Israel son todos, eso se refiere a la parte del gobierno, la parte política, son todos tzadikim y que todo es bueno, entonces hay que explicarle a esa persona que no es tan simple el tema y que también si vemos que se está haciendo algo en contra de la Torah, tenemos que protestar y se tiene que hacer un regaño, o sea, un rechazo hacia eso, pero que se tiene que hacer con mucho cuidado porque no es un tema tan simple.
We have other questions?
Yeah, we have two more questions.
Yes.
And Ebenezer, a good friend of mine, he is asking, what if someone does experience something negative in the land and wants to solve the pain, discomfort, he will have to talk about the bad experience? Is this Lashon Hara?
if there is a reason to speak about something, so to resolve a problem, so it is not called Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara is to speak about it just for the sake of speaking negative. But if somebody have a real purpose and he needs to resolve a problem, so it's not called Lashon Hara. This is part of the need of learning Halachot Lashon Hara, is to understand those differences.
Entonces, Ebenezer preguntó que si alguien tuvo una experiencia de algo negativo dentro de la tierra de Israel y quiere resolver ese dolor a través de hablar esta mala experiencia, se considera Lashon Hara. El rabino contestó que parte de la importancia de aprender las leyes de Lashon Hara es saber esta diferencia. Entonces explica el rabino que cuando algo se tiene que hablar, que está mal, para resolverse, para llegar a una solución, no se considera Lashon Hara. Sin embargo, que si es algo nada más que se va a hablar negativamente por hablar negativamente, entonces sí es considerado Lashon Hara. We have now another question from Chaim again.
Yes.
He's asking that if Moshe Rabbeinu would have entered the Eretz Yisrael, the level of redemption would be achieved because he is the Neshama of the Mashiach.
We cannot say if that would happen, what would have happened. Everything in the hands of Hashem. Hashem have the pre-plan of the whole creation. So Hashem knew about all of those possibilities. Everything is coming in the right time. So it's true that Moshe Rabbeinu is the same Neshama of Mashiach, but one of the reasons that Moshe Rabbeinu did not enter Eretz Israel, it's brought down in the certain books that if Moshe Rabbeinu would have built Bet HaMikdash, the Bet HaMikdash would not be able to be destroyed. And then when Am Yisrael was doing the sins in the time of Bet HaMikdash, instead of destroying the Bet HaMikdash, Hashem would have had to destroy Am Yisrael, Chas v'Shalom. So for this reason and other reasons that we don't know, it was very good that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't enter Eretz Israel.
Entonces, Jaime preguntó que si Moshe Rabbeinu hubiera entrado a la tierra de Israel, habría llegado la redención, porque él es la Neshama del Mashiach. Y el rabino contestó que es muy complicado ponerse a pensar de lo que hubiera pasado o lo que no hubiera pasado. Si pasó en la forma en la que pasó es porque Hashem así lo quiso. También especifica el rabino que sí, que Moshe Rabbeinu tenía, el alma de Moshe Rabbeinu es el mismo alma del Mashiach. Entonces, dice que de haber entrado Moshe Rabbeinu a la tierra de Israel, hubiera construido el Beit HaMikdash, y que cuando Am Israel pecó, entonces ese Beit HaMikdash no se hubiera podido destruir. Entonces, cuando Am Israel pecó, en lugar de haber destruido el Beit HaMikdash, Hashem hubiera tenido que haber destruido a Am Israel. Entonces vemos que Moshe Rabbeinu no haya entrado a la tierra de Israel, pues bueno, y que al final, por estas y otras razones que no entendemos y conocemos, pasó como tuvo que haber pasado, y así Hashem lo quiso.
Okay, so I have to finish. I have a few things that I need to do now. I want to finish with the bracha for everybody, that Hashem will give all of us the right understanding of how to guard ourselves from any negativity, if it is doing something negative or speaking something negative or thinking something negative, and to turn all of our life to that it will be private domain, that it will be positive, that it will be holy, specifically for Shabbat, but really for all of our life. And with as much as we are purifying our spiritual world that is inside of us, Hashem is also purifying the world around us, and we don't have any disease, we don't have any virus, we don't have any problem, and everything comes to the positivity possibility that there is.
Amén. Entonces el rabino quiere terminar diciendo que, bueno, dándonos una bendición en la cual nos deshagamos de toda nuestra negatividad, de todos los pensamientos negativos, de toda la habladuría negativa, de todos los actos negativos, y que así como nosotros nos ocupemos en purificarnos a nosotros mismos, Hashem nos purifique en nuestro ambiente y nos libre de cualquier enfermedad, de cualquier cosa negativa. Rabbi, I skipped a question from Rabbi Israel Villasiz, and he wanted to ask it.
Yes.
Sí, Israel.
Ralph, just one more minute. Sorry, I
Yes.
have questions because all the situation we're living. Okay, what about like the government say that it is mandatory to put a carpet outside of the house? This carpet have to be wet with a special liquid, like to purify the shoes before you enter. You enter your house or you enter in a building. So when you step in the carpet, you can feel it's really wet, and you squeeze with your body when you step on it. So I have that in my house, like in every single door in the entrance, like of my house. I need to step on it. So I didn't want to do it in Shabbat, but the other day I went to the doctor with my kid walking because he was he was feeling really bad. So they want me to step on the carpet that it was mamash with liquid. When you step on it, you can hear the sound when the carpet is squeezed. So I didn't want to do it. I also want to take the temperature from me. So I don't know how to behave in this situation now.
Okay.
Can I translate the question
Yes,
first?
yes, yes, yes.
Entonces, el rabino Villasís pregunta que, por ejemplo, en su país, en Ecuador, tienen por ley que poner unos tapetes mojados, húmedos, para sanitizar los zapatos, y que eso conlleva un problema en Shabbat, porque cuando uno los pisa es como exprimir en Shabbat. Entonces, él le explicó una situación que él tiene personal y que cómo se podría solucionar o cómo se podría, sí, solucionar eso para Shabbat.
So the answer is that it's not the problem of squeezing when you're stepping on a wet carpet, because this is not the purpose. That you didn't want to squeeze, and you didn't do something that is for squeezing. Okay, so this is not a prohibition in Shabbat, and whenever you have something that is a safek of pikuach nefesh, even if it is far safek of pikuach nefesh, so even if it was breaking Shabbat, there is a permission to do it. You have to break Shabbat to save life. So even if it is a doubt, still we break Shabbat for that. But to step on a wet carpet for this purpose of making killing the bacteria and so on. So this is not breaking Shabbat anyhow. So there's no problem with that.
Entonces el rabino responde que no se considera exprimir porque no se tiene la intención de exprimir y no es la forma natural en la que se exprime. Pero también agrega que en casos de pikuach nefesh, que quiere decir que hay riesgo de vida, que tiene que violar Shabbat, inclusive si es duda, por ejemplo, si alguien está enfermo y no sabe si su vida depende de eso, está permitido inclusive violar Shabbat por esa situación, en riesgo de vida o duda de riesgo de vida.
If you have something wet and the reason you're stepping on it is to squeeze the water out of it, so then you have a problem. But here the purpose is you're not stepping on it to squeeze the water out. You're stepping on it because you want to clean the shoes. So this is not because the purpose is not to squeeze, so it's not called breaking Shabbat.
Entonces el rabino aclara que si se tuviera la intención de pararse sobre un tapete o un trapo para exprimirlo, entonces sí sería un problema, pero como acá la intención es diferente y es para sanitizar los zapatos, no se considera como violación de Shabbat.
Última pregunta y me voy. Última. Last question and I'm leaving.
Yes.
Last. Okay, just to clarify. Ilkot Chávez, in the Siman 301, the Mechaber says that you are not allowed to go, in a public domain, and he used the word farmi. And when I translate the word farmi, it says with a mask in the street in Shabbat. So that's why I'm asking about the mask, because Siman 301, 20 says the Mechaber writes, you are not allowed to go in a public, with a farmi.
Just a moment, I want, פה המשנה ברורה כחול, מאחורי הסידור שלך, למטה.
Preguntó I'm just going to translate the question.
Yes.
Preguntó el rabino Villasís que en el Shulchan Aruch, en el capítulo 301, el Mechaber, Rabbi Yosef Karo, explica que no se puede caminar en Shabbat con una expresión que ahí dice farming, que se traduce como máscara, y que por eso él preguntó sobre las máscaras que nos obligan a ponernos hoy en día y el rabino va a contestar.
Okay, so the halacha there in 301 Seif Kaf is not talking about exactly a mask. Is talking more about a costume that that they wear. So this
farming, we will translate like custom.
Custom, like in Purim, like Purim costume.
Ah, like a Purim mask.
Yes. So
Disfraz,
something like that is not a way of
Okay.
is wearing. It's not like like clothing that you're wearing. It's something that is on top that will be carrying. But the mask of the that they put for the coronavirus is a way of wearing, like clothing. So then it's not a problem.
Entonces el rabino le contestó que estoy en el capítulo 301, subcapítulo 20, el Mejaber está hablando de un disfraz que se usaba antes. O sea, esta máscara que se ponían era como un disfraz, tipo los disfraces que se usan en Purim. Pero las máscaras que usamos por el virus no son para disfrazarnos, sino es parte ya de la vestimenta.
The only problem is that someone that is wearing that have to remember not to take it down, not to take it out when it's in public domain. You have to be very conscious to leave it on you all the time, as long as you didn't go back to your house, not to take it out.
Entonces el rabino dice que la consideración que debemos tener siempre en cuenta es que no quitarnos la máscara cuando estamos en dominio público, sino hasta que regresemos a la casa o vayamos a donde se tenga que ir, pero de estar siempre conscientes de que si ya no las quitamos, entonces sí ya es un problema, pero mientras esté puesta, no es problema, se considera como parte de la vestimenta.
בסדר, רבינו?
Thank you, Rav. אני אוהב אותה.
ברוך השם, ברוך השם. Okay. So, Yuda, I don't know. Did you translate the blessing? I think you missed the translation of the blessing.
No, I did. No, I did.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Baruch Hashem. So thank you very much. Thank you, Yuda, for the translation, and thank you all of you that you participate. Bezrat Hashem. We for the Halachot Lashon Hara, we're looking for someone who will do the translation to Spanish. So if somebody is able to download the PDF from the website and then to do translation to Spanish and to send it to us, so then we will do that also for Spanish, Bezrat Hashem. We will put the link in the WhatsApp group. And Bezrat Hashem, I wish everybody Shabbat Shalom, that everybody will be secure and healthy and spiritual and physical. And Bezrat Hashem, we will meet again next week.
Entonces, el rabino primero nos quiere agradecer por haber estado aquí en su clase y también quiere preguntar si alguien tiene la posibilidad de traducir este PDF de la Shonara que él tiene en inglés, traducirlo en español, que él va a poner el link en el chat de WhatsApp y que nos desea un Shabbat Shalom y que estemos sanos y seguros.
Shabbat Shalom, toda רבה.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom ומבורך. ברכה והצלחה. Thank you very much.
שלום, רב. ביי ביי.
גם לך.